Okay, in this video I want to show you a technique that I really love, and that's being able at the time of placement to be able to take an impression that is going to allow you to make a final restoration which you'll deliver at second stage uncovery. Okay, there's a lot of reasons why this is a very useful technique. Not to mention it's just going to shorten your overall treatment time, but it's also going to generate better soft tissues around it. It's never made sense to me that our conventional workflow is to bury the implant and then in 3 months uncover it and stick on a perfectly cylindrical trash can shaped healing abutment, force gingiva to heal to that, and then have to train it again into another shape to make it more natural like a tooth. To me, it makes so much more sense to be able to deliver, let's say, a healing abutment right now that is anatomic, that's going to give you the ideal shaped soft tissues and force the tissue to heal from that right from the start. And so you can certainly do that with custom healing abutments, but something that's also going to expedite this process much faster is let's just skip the healing abutment stage and let's let the implant integrate, and at 3 or 4 months uncover it and deliver the final restoration, which you can design to have the perfect soft tissue contours of what you want to generate. The tissue heals to that, and now you have an excellent architecture to the tissue. You don't generally have to worry about metal showing through or worrying about where a margin ends up if you're going to do this screw retained, because the metal interface is going to be way down deep. But finally, the other advantage to this is that you're going to do what's called a one abutment, one time concept. And it's a pretty well-studied concept. It just basically boils down to the fact that the less you can disturb things at that implant to gingiva interface, the better you are. And so if you can deliver something one time, never to be removed again, you've got the best chance of crestal bone preservation as well as developing ideal soft tissues. So I'm going to show you the way to do this digitally. But I wanted to start by showing you a case, old school analog. This is one that I did several years back prior to doing all the digital stuff. So this was the edentulous site, and we had to place an implant in this edentulous site, and this was old school guided. This was just a model-based guide that I had done, pre-CT, all that stuff. And what we did is we made a tiny little flap. We put the guide on, we placed the implant. I used the Blue Sky Bio bone expanders here in this site, and using PAs was able to kind of split the difference between these roots because they were pretty convergent on one another. So with that done, normally at this point you would just place a cover screw and sew it up. What I did instead is I put on an impression transfer. This is a multi-purpose abutment from Blue Sky Bio. This was for an internal hex implant. And I went ahead and took a final impression right now here on the day of surgery, okay? Now with that done, now I put on a cover screw, sew it up, send the patient on their way. But the beauty of this is that now you can go ahead, if you wanted to, and place a soft tissue layer here and then pour it up in stone, okay? And here is the resulting model. Now this is not that useful of a model, right? Because it's got flapped tissue. We don't really want that. The reason that I actually poured a soft tissue model here was just so that I could easily peel it away. And I wanted to put back on the preoperative soft tissue contours, and did that by taking a suck down of their preoperative model, putting that back on here and injecting the soft tissue around it, right? I'm blowing through this because this is not pertinent to what we're going to do. This is so much easier now utilizing the digital. Okay, so now this gets me a working model that's got the implant in its final position. It's not going to change during the time of the integration period. So really the only risk you run is if your implant fails, well, now you've made a restoration. Okay, so that's not a big risk in my book. Okay, so now I was able to cut in with a burr the ideal soft tissue contour, right? You can see this is more that premolar shape emergence. All right, bowl shaped, coming out, flaring out, kind of like a mushroom. And now I made a screw-mentable crown. This is when I had a Cerax, so I milled an Emax, bonded that all on together. And mind you, this is, I did this the same day of surgery, right? I was immediately able to pour this up, and by that afternoon, mill out the Emax crown. So even though she's going to be waiting 3 months to fully heal up, I was able to, at her second day post-op visit, to take that screw-mentable crown and just hold it up there and make sure I nailed the aesthetics. That for me is a benefit because I get to dial in my aesthetics a little more without being under the gun. If I needed to look at this and say, oh, they need a little more gingival brownness or whatever, I could have added that, right? So this is the final screw-mentable crown. If I was doing this nowadays on a Biomax implant, because this was internal hex, my emergence would look much different. It would be more of that mushroom shaped, so it would stay real skinny until it gets up and out of the bone and then flare. But this is what it is, it's fine. And when I get her back in 4 months, I do the uncovery and do a torque test, forward torque it to 30 Newton centimeters. If it does that, in my book it's integrated, and that's all I need to know. And now all I have to do is deliver that final restoration, torque it to its final torque, and we're done. Now the only thing that can change is the contacts could potentially drift a little bit. And so what I do is I typically make my contacts a little bit heavy, just in case there was a spreading force, so that I would be able to whittle that back. I'd rather deal with a tight contact than a loose open contact. And with that done, this is a coronally positioned flap. Okay, so you can see I've gone through the papillae, and this is pulling the gingiva up and over. Ideally, I'd like to put it as far up on this crown as I can, because again, this has been designed to an ideal contour, and the tissue is going to be forced to heal to that. Okay, this was the final result. I don't think I have a follow-up, but this was the placement. This is one of the big reasons I've switched away from internal hex style implants, regardless of whose brand they are, is that you just typically see some bone loss at the crest just due to this leaky connection. One of the reasons I really prefer Biomax. Okay, so that's the bone expander kit. So now I want to, with that background, take you over to kind of a digital analog mix and show you how I would approach this case nowadays with guided surgery. Okay, so I am a dry finger dentist these days, and so I don't have patient cases to show you this on, but you can use your imagination. The gold is our patient, right? This is Mrs. Jones, and on Mrs. Jones, we're going to do a guided surgery. You can see the surgical guide that's been generated, and so let's pretend that we've now gone and we've driven our implant in, we've bottomed out, and you can see that the guided carrier has put it down to its final position, and we've done an excellent guided surgery here. So you're about 5 minutes into this at this point. In a typical guided surgery case, remember this is your patient. Implant is placed in our patient here. Okay, now one of the great things you can do, I don't like in the old technique having to squirt PVS and all that stuff up under my flap. That scares me a little bit. I don't know if that's a wise thing to do. So what I would suggest instead is now take the Biomax or whatever implant you're using, impression transfer. We're going to put that on. You don't torque these to 30, you just finger tighten them, 2-finger tight. You can see my placement. This is going to need some kind of a custom abutment, obviously. And now, remember, we've got this guide. What a great impression transfer this is. So you can just put your guide back on and now use some flowable composite and lock this. Of course, my tip's clogged up. Just a second. Okay, new tip. Flowable composite, pattern resin, really anything you want to use. And squirt that in between the guide and your impression transfer and lock this together. Now those of you with an intraoral scanner are already saying, why would I ever bother with this? Because I can take an intraoral scan of the scan body and be able to design it that way between now and the next uncovery procedure. And you're right, I totally agree with you. But not everybody's got an intraoral scanner. Let's suppose you're using like the Blue Sky or the Shining 3D desktop scanner. Okay, that's obviously not an option then. So this is for those people that have some way of digitizing. We're even going to use physical analog models, but they don't have an intraoral scanner. Okay, so note that I've filled in that gap. This is going to be locked in, and this is almost the equivalent of doing like a verification jig, right? Ultra rigid. Virtually no chance of anything distorting due to shrinkage of the composite because you're only filling in about a millimeter gap. The hole on the Biomax fully guided keyless kit generates about a 5-something millimeter hole, which is plenty big enough to put in your impression transfer and not have a large gap that you're going to have to worry about. Okay, so I'm curing this in. Again, in the mouth. This is day of surgery. We just placed the implant, and we are just taking again, kind of like a verification jig right after surgery. No impression material, no nothing that's going to get down in our surgical site and potentially cause you reasons to worry. Okay, so with that done, this is, I'm treating like an open tray impression. Unscrew this. And now I'm assuming probably that you've got a 3D printer with this technique too, or you at least got access to one. So I've got a preoperative model that I've just ground out the whole area where that implant is going to go. If you don't have a 3D printer, this could be your stone model, which you've ground out a socket to receive the implant. Okay, see where I'm going with this? So what I need to do is assemble an analog to it. Drop that back on. Again, with the precision of fit that you have with a surgical guide, this is going to very accurately index your implant into position. And now you just need to lock in that analog. And so once we've locked in that analog into this position, we have a working model that exactly represents what is going on in the patient's mouth. And on that, we'll be able to design our final crown. So for this, again, use pattern resin, Primo pattern, sorry about the camera. I would say Primo pattern is the best material to use for this. It's available from Primo Tech USA. And the reason I like that material the most is because it has nearly the lowest shrinkage of any material we can use in dentistry, thus making the transfer highly, highly accurate. I don't have any on hand, so I'm just using Triad gel, which will work just as well too. But again, all things being equal, I would rather have Primo pattern. And I'm going to cure this in. And with that done, I'm going to undo the screw on the impression transfer, pull all that and the guide out, and cure it from this side as well. Great, so here's the final result. We have a working model now for the implant position. And so I've got 3 months to be able to design this final restoration, and I'm going to design it. You notice there's no soft tissue here. That's by intention. I don't want the soft tissue. I want to design the crown to ideal and deliver an ideal crown and make the tissue heal to that. So the only thing I'm worried about is making sure that I emerge far enough out of that analog that I'm not going to worry about bone impingement. And from there, I'm going to just keep that mushroom or trumpet shaped emergence. And I'm going to design the ideal restoration. And I can make the final abutment and crown, or the screw retained crown, whatever you want to do. You're going to be able to deliver that at your uncovery. So just to reiterate the benefits of this, you're going to be able to do one abutment one time. You're going to eliminate 1, 2 potentially appointments from the overall procedure, and it literally adds almost no time to your uncovery. Instead of delivering a healing abutment like you normally would at the uncovery procedure, and then having to wait on healing, and then having to take an impression, and then having to deliver the impression, that's 3 more appointments. We're going to turn our uncovery appointment into the final restoration delivery appointment, eliminating 2 of those appointments and also getting a better result. And so to me, this is a really, really useful technique. And I think if you'll get in the habit of just doing this with every guided implant placement, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier.